Close the doors of your mind from all carnal will, all carnal thought, all emotions, all desires, all fears, all laziness, all doubt. Anything that's in the center of your mind, in your 12 cranial nerves, within your 12 melanin centers, within your hands and your feet, that control the rest of your body and your organs and your emotions and your thoughts. Bring your mind to balance. Bring your body to balance. Bring your consciousness to balance within yourself, within your soul, your nefesh, within your body, within your tent, your ahal, your mikdash, your stationary temple. For today is a day of freedom. Today is a day of warning. Today is a day that Yahuwah has given to us as another Shabbat, a day of rest, that we may cease from all of our selfish ways and our selfish thoughts and our selfish understanding and our selfish ambitions and our selfish goals, that we may focus on His one and single goal, to be joined to His Ruach, to make plans by His Ruach, to make plans and understanding and future plans by His Ruach, by His Debar, by His understanding. For when we live in this world, we are not of it. We live in this world, we dwell amongst the world, but we are not of the world. For all that's in the world is the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of this life. For the next life is not as short as this one. The next life is eternal. And we must acknowledge Him every single day, and especially the day that He gave you, that you may stop and cease, that you may Shabbat from all the things that you have done. For this day we acknowledge the one who made all of the nahar of the earth, all of the rivers and streams, all the shimmering light, the one who made all of the mountains and the jaggeds, the one who made the ocean, the yam, and all of the sea creatures in it, the one who allows the eagles, the natsar, and the birds to fly, the one who gives life and understanding and the neshama to Adam, the one who allows all of the plants and the dry land to appear in the mist and the aid that open the door for all of the mist to come on the earth, that all the plants may dash and sprout forth fruit. The one who separated the cosmos, the rakia, from the waters above and the below. The one who rolled upon the wings of the wind and it moved upon the face of the waters, the ruach, and gave instructions and light into this earth. Yahuwah Elohim, by His Debar. So this Yom, as we sit here and we understand why Yahushua Mashiach came and why He ascended and why He sits at the right hand of Yahuwah, helping Him govern the seven Shamayim, the Shabai Shamayim, who sits above the 13th Shamayim, who sits above all gods and all rulers and all beings of the earth. Yahuwah and His Ben Yahusha. So as we move forward in His righteousness. We move forward in His Aleph Beth. We move forward in His Muaz and His feasts. We move forward in His 7 celestial circles. We move forward in His 364-day calendar according to the Hanuk calendar that was given to Him before Shem, Ham, and Japheth was even born on this earth. Yahuwah Elohim. So as we move forward in His kindness, His ahab, His joy, His patience, His meekness, His temperance, and His amunah. So this is the book of Psalms, chapter 24. Tahalim, Psalms, chapter 24, and verse 1. Psalms, chapter 24, Tahalim, 24, verse 1. It says, the earth is Yahuwah's and the fullness thereof. So the whole earth. When you look at the whole Aras, the whole flat earth. The whole earth where He plants His seed and He hopes for trees to sprout forth and bear fruit. He says, the earth, the Aras, is Yahuwah's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. For He has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers, right? Just like we look at the rivers and streams, we look at the earth, we look at everything that we see, everything that's here is all for His servitude, right? And to serve Him. Who shall ascend the hill? Who shall Allah the har of Yahuwah? Who shall ascend up to the mountain? And who shall stand in His Kudash place? Who's going to stand up? Who's going to stand in His Kudash place? He who has clean hands. He say, make sure you wash your hands. Just like we talked about before, these are the things that defile you. He said, make sure you wash your hands. Because these things come from the heart. Make sure you wash your hands. He says, he who has clean hands and a pure heart, a pure mind. He said, this is the person who's going to do that. And does not lift up his soul to what is false. And does not swear deceitfully. Who does not swear deceitfully. He said, this person will be the person who will ascend up. Right? This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4, Book of Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 9. The Book of Deuteronomy chapter 4, Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 9. Only take care and keep your soul, your nefesh, diligently, right? Just like in your patience in Luke 21 and 9, possess your soul. Keep it diligently, right? Diligently, right? If you ain't diligent in what you're doing, then you'll find yourself, how you say, making errors, right? Because that's what's going to happen to you. Right, this is Matthew chapter 2 and verse 6. Actually, yeah, go 2 and 7. Matthew 2 and 7. Matthew 2 and 7. It says, Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. Why? Because when you start looking at the stars, you say those who don't lift up their eyes to what is false. Right? Why? Because you're looking up. Right? It says the time the star had appeared. Because there's a certain type of kukab that appears during this time. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, Go search diligently for the child. All right, but it means they did a thorough search. So you can be thoroughly searching out to do evil to somebody else. Instead of search diligently, I say being diligent and detailed in keeping your soul. Right? He said you can do that. And it says, and when you have found him, bring me word that I may too come worship him. That I may too come worship him. To do what? After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the Qahalath was. It says, and when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. And they fell down and worshipped him. Why? Because they follow in the cosmos. They follow in the constellations. They follow in the stars. And they fell down to do what? They worship a child. Wow. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, and gold, and frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way, which means these people were entombed. These people were not only entombed, they were entombed, they understood the cosmos and the movement of the stars. They were entombed to their dreams. And Herod deceitfully sent them out. But being warned in a dream, they did not come back. Why? Because they understood some things. They were entombed. Right? And it says, verse 13, Now when they had departed, behold, a malach of Yahuwah appeared to Yusuf in a dream. Right? Notice how all these people are sensitive. They understand it. Right? Yahuwah is not communicating with no non-conscious people. People who are not in tune with everything. He says, Now when they had departed, behold, a malach of Yahuwah appeared to Yusuf in a dream and said, so he appeared to him in a chazon, in a vision, a dream, in a tardema, a deep sleep. And it says, Rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Mizraim. Why would he tell them to flee to Mizraim? Because he's obeying his voice. He's obeying his voice. And he says right here, and remain there until I tell you. He obeying his voice. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. He's obeying his voice to save the child's life. Why? Because if you have a special child, if you bear a child in the world and that child is special, if that child has something to do, Satan coming after you. If you get immersed in Yahushua Mashiach and you get these gifts you got, understand, and you become a little child again, Satan after you. He wants you. And he's going to inquire diligently of the people around you, and he's going to use other people to try to find out where you are. And guess what happens? And he arose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Mizraim. Why? Because you remember Abraham obeyed his voice. He told him to go to Mizraim too. And it says, and remained there until the death of Herod. And he stayed there till the person who was seeking their life, seeking his life, was gone. And it says, this was to fulfill what Yahuwah had spoken by the Nabi, out of Mizraim I called my son. That wasn't the only thing he fulfilled. All right, going back to Deuteronomy chapter 4, Dabarim chapter 4, verse 9. Deuteronomy, Dabarim chapter 4, verse 9. It says, only take care and keep your soul diligently, which means you got to keep your soul not only diligently when it comes to your inward man, your ruach man, but you got to keep your soul diligent when it comes to your health, when it comes to your mental state, when it comes to your body state, when it comes to your back, your lower back, your body, your whole body, how it's encompassed, your dendrons, your axons, your body, your cells, your cell member. You got to keep your soul diligently. You got to make sure everything on your body, everything that you own, that Yahuwah loaned to you, you got to make sure everything, you got to keep it all. This ain't just about, you got to do it all. Lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen. Why? Unless they depart from your heart all the days of your life. You know what things can depart from your life. He said it won't depart from your heart, your mind, all your life. It says all your life. Right? And it says make them known to your children and your children's children. How on the day that you stood before Yahuwah, your Elohim at Horeb, Yahuwah said to me, gather the people that I may let them hear my words so that they may learn, right? To fear, do what? Learn to fear what? He says, learn to fear what? That they may learn to fear what? Me. All the days that they live on earth. So this ain't just no one day thing. I keep the Shabbat and I fear Yahuwah. I keep a feast day and I fear Yahuwah. That ain't fearing no Yahuwah. Right? It says right here that it says they may learn to fear me all the days they live on earth, and that they may teach their children so. They may teach their children so. And then it says, and you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, while the mountain burned with fire to the heart of Shamayim, wrapped in darkness, cloud, and gloom. Then Yahuwah spoke to you out of the midst of the fire, and you heard the sound of the words, but saw no form. There was only a voice. There was only a voice. And we're not talking about the voice you see on TV with the singers. He said the voice, and he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, that is the 10 Commandments. He said, I gave you that. I want you to perform it. Thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. Remember, 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 thou shalt not, thou shalt not. That's what he's like. I want you to perform that. And he wrote them on the 2 tables of stone. And Yahuwah commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and rules, that you might do them in the land that you are going to take possession. Therefore watch yourselves very carefully. He said what? He said you got to be very careful. Since you saw no form on the day that Yahuwah spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, beware lest you act corruptly and by making a carved image for yourselves in the form of any figure, the likeness of male and female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the air, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground. So that's anything. A beetle, a dragonfly, an ant, a natsar, an eagle, or anything. He said, then you do what? It says the likeness of anything, the likeness of any fish in the sea, in the water under the earth. Beware lest you raise your eyes to Shamayim. And do what? And when you see the Shamash, the Yarek, and the stars, and all the hosts of Shamayim, you be drawn away to bow down to them, to serve them, things that Yahuwah, your Elohim, allotted to all peoples under the whole Shamayim. He said the whole earth. Right, so that word for bow down in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 19. Let's skip over. I'll go back to that. And it says right here, and it says, but Yahuwah has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Mizraim, to be a people of his own inheritance. He said, as you are this day. So you look at all the things that can happen in the earth and everything that can happen in the world. And all these things happen because of one thing and one thing only. Right? This Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 19, that word for, what is it, bow down, it says, let's see, yeah, that word for, is it bow down? Draw down to yourselves. Yeah. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 19, that word for bow down, I think it's shakah, but I think it is. Where should we go? Yeah, it's shakah. It means to depress, to prostrate, to bow self, to crouch, to fall, to be humble, to obedience, to reverence, to make, to stoop, to worship. That's the same thing you did for Anah, for kafar. But you be doing your kafar, your fasting. You be doing all of your fasting and your worship and all the things you do to the host of the Shamayim, to a star, you be a stargazer. Then you become a worshiper of the host of the Shamayim. You become a worshiper of it. Right? And then guess what is going to happen? It says right here, he said, if you do that, what's going to happen? He said, I'm going to destroy you. He said, I'm going to destroy you. Right, verse 15, go to Deuteronomy 4:15. It says, therefore, watch yourselves very carefully, since you saw no form in the day that I spoke to you out of Horeb. Right? He said, you saw no form. Go to verse 22. Verse 20. 4 and 20. But Yahuwah has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Mizraim, to be a people of his own inheritance, as you are this day. Furthermore, Yahuwah was angry with me because of you. And he swore that you should not cross Jordan, and that I should not enter the good land that Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you for an inheritance. For I must die in this land. I must not go over Jordan, but you shall go over and take possession of that good land. Take care lest you forget the covenant of Yahuwah your Elohim, which he made with you, and make carved images, the form of anything that Yahuwah your Elohim has forbidden you. For Yahuwah your Elohim is a consuming fire, a jealous Elohim. He said he a consuming fire. He said he is a consuming fire, right? So this is the book of Ephesians. The book of Ephesians. I think it's Ephesians. No, actually 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 3. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 10. It says, according to the kind of Elohim given to me, like a skilled master builder, I lay a foundation, and therefore someone else is building upon it. Let each one take care how he builds upon it. He said, you got to be real careful. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Yahushua Mashiach. Now, if anyone builds on the foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become manifest. For the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire. Because Yahuwah is a jealous Elohim. And the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. He said if it survives. But it says, if anyone's work is burnt up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only through fire. Right? Only through fire. This is Yeshayahu chapter 48. Yeshayahu chapter 48, verse 10. Yeshayahu chapter 48, verse 8. Yeshayahu chapter 48, verse 8. It says, you have never heard, you have never known. From of old your ear has not been opened. For I knew that you would surely deal treacherously, and that from before birth you were called a rebel. He said, I already knew this. He said, I already knew y'all going to worship idols, y'all going to make graven images. You're going to make the things I put you over, I gave Adam, just like I did when I made him. I put him over and he gave names to all the creatures. I knew you was going to worship it. I knew you were going to bow down. I knew you were going to make graven images. I already knew you were going to do that. And I knew you weren't going to perform the 10 Commandments. Verse 9 says, for my name's sake, I defer my anger, because I can't do that anymore. For the sake of my praise, I restrain it for you, that I may not cut you off. That's the only reason. Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tried you in a furnace of affliction. I'm going to try you with fire. For my own sake, I do it. For how should my name be profaned? My kabod I will not give to another, because I'm very, very jealous. He said, I'm not giving it to nobody else. He said, I'm very, very jealous, right? So this is the testament of Asher. 12 patriarchs. The testament of Asher. Ashar. The testament of Asher. The testament of Asher. Chapter 1. The testament of Asher, chapter 1, verse 1. It says, the copy of the testament to Asher, what things he spake to his sons in the 125th year of his life. Man can't even live that long because of sin. But he said jubilees, right? He said, you can't even live. How many jubilees you live? How many 7 sevens did you live? 7 years, 7 years, 7 years. How many jubilees you live? And he says, verse 2 says, for while he was still in health, he said to them, hearken ye, children of Asher, to your father, and I will declare to you all that is upright in the sight of Yahuwah. 2 ways hath Elohim given to the sons of men, and 2 inclinations, and 2 kinds of actions, and 2 modes of actions, and 2 issues. Therefore, all things are by twos, one over against the other. For there are 2 ways of good and evil, and with these are 2 inclinations in our breast, discriminating them. Therefore, if the soul takes pleasure in the good inclination, all its actions are in righteousness. He said everything. It says, and if it is sin, it straightway repenteth it. It'll repent immediately. He's like, I already know this is wrong. He said, I'm gonna repent. He said, but if it's good, he said it's gonna be of are in righteousness. Verse 7 says, for having its thoughts set upon righteousness, and casting away wickedness, it straightway overthroweth the evil and uprooteth the sin. So any type of sin that one has within oneself, he said, if you following what is right, tzedakah, righteousness, he said you're going to immediately pluck it up. He said there's not going to be no lingering. There's not going to be any type of repeating. He said, I'm going to immediately do it. Why? Verse 8 says, but if it inclines to the evil inclination, all its actions are wickedness, and it driveth away the good, and cleaveth to the evil, and it ruleth by Satan, or by law. Even though its work, it says, even though it work what is good, he perverted it to evil. Right? Verse 9 says, for whenever it beginneth to do good, he forces the issue of the action into evil for him. seeing that the treasure of the inclination is filled with an evil spirit. He's like, what? All of that. He said, it's going to be filled with an evil spirit, right? So this is the book of Colossians, or I think it's Philippians. Yeah. Book of Philippians, or actually 1 Corinthians. Yeah, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1. 1 Corinth, the people that were inheriting to Benjamin, about chapter 10, verse 1. It says, "For I do not want you to be unaware of brothers, sisters, that our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea." They crossed the river in a moon. "And all were immersed into Mashah in the cloud and in the sea. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink." Why? Because when they came out of Israel, they were told to do Pasah. "For they drank from that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Mashiach. Nevertheless, with most of them, Yahuwah was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness." They would do what? He said they were overthrown in the wilderness, in the how you say, midbar. Now these things took place are examples, that we might not desire as they did, nor be idolaters as some of them were. He said they worshiped the sun, moon, and stars. They became stargazers. They started using Yahuwah's name. They started mixing it. And he's like, hey, I don't do that. I understand. I'm jealous right now. When I get jealous, things start to happen. Verse says, "The people sat down to eat and drink and rose to play." You eat for 7 days. People say, I eat for 7 days, drink, eat. Yeshurun waxed fat, and he kicked. And get what he said. "The people sat down to eat and drink and rose to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day." He said they fell. So how? He said, which means they fell away. They fell away. He said 23,000 fell away. They all fell. And amazing, and you see today, all these people doing all this sexual morality and things, and they're the main people trying to condemn people when you should have been failed. You should have been gone. You shouldn't even be here. It says, "We must not put Mashiach to the test as some of them did, and were destroyed by serpents." They were destroyed by serpents. You put me to the test. He said they were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer, by Mastama. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instructions, on whom the end of the age has come. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands, it doesn't matter, man, woman, child. You think you standing? You think you so right and righteous and pure? He said, take heed lest you fall. Lest you fall away. He said, lest you fall away and you get judgment. Why would he say that? No temptation has overtaken him, right? He said, why would he say that? He said, why would he say that? Go to verse 31. Verse 31. It says, so whether you eat or drink or whatsoever you do, do all to the kabod of Yahuwah Elohim. He said, whatever you do. Why? Because he's a jealous Elohim. Do it all for him. Right? And it says, give no offense to the Yahudim or to the Greeks, or to the congregation of, this is Elohim, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I am a Mashiach. Right? But he said, all of them was destroyed by the destroyer, and they participated in many other things they should not. He said they participated in it. Right? So this is the book of Numbers, chapter 21. Numbers, chapter 21. Midbar, chapter 21, verse 4. From Mount Hor they set out by the way of the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the people became impatient in the way. He said the people became impatient. Impatient. Right? Right? He said the people became impatient. That word for impatient is Ketzar. Kuf Sad Rosh. Ketzar. It means to dock. It means to literally. It means to, it says especially to harvest grass, grain. It means to cut down. It says to become discouraged. To mourn. It also means to reap. To dock, right? But it said right here, for verse 4, go back to Numbers 21:4. From Mount Hor, they set out by the way of the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the people became impatient on the way. He said, Ketzar. They became discouraged. He said, what they were reaping. This is what they were reaping. Why? That's what they were reaping. And then it says right here, they became impatient in the way. And the people spoke against Elohim Yahuwah and against Meshach. Why have you brought us out of Mizraim to die in the wilderness? He said, what you brought us out here for? Because they became discouraged, impatient. This is what they were reaping as their fruit. For there is no food and no water, and we loathe this worthless food. We cast this worthless food away. And get what? Then Yahuwah sent fiery serpents among them. And they bit the people, so many of the people of Yasharal, how you say it? What they do? They died. Right? That word for serpent is saraf. He sent poisonous snakes. He said, what do you mean poisonous snakes? A cobra, a viper, a copperhead, a mamba. People say, I ain't never seen a poisonous snake before. He said, Yahuwah sent mambas, copperheads, poisonous rattlesnakes. And he said, serpents. It also means saraf. It's a creature, a copper color. You should say, yeah, copperhead. He said, I sent copperheads, serpents, among the people, and they bit the people so that many of the people died in Yasharal. Then we just talked about the day of Yahuwah. He said the day of Yahuwah is like a lion. Matter of fact, it's like a man fell from a lion, and then a dod met him. A arid and a dod, and then a nakash, a serpent bit him. He said, man, that's the day of Yahuwah. That's his judgment. People saying, what do you mean judgment? That's his judgment. He sent copperhead. He sent a mamba, a cobra. Yeah, 13-foot cobra, about 50 of them. Because he controlled all the animals. And he says, and he bit the people so that many of the people of Yasharal died. And the people came to Meshach and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against Yahuwah and against you. It takes 100 copperheads, mambas, and snakes, and all these things to get people to repent. Just to doubt Yahuwah in a little bit. He said, doubt Yahuwah a little bit, and you get that. Right? So this is the book of Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6, verse 1. He said they all drinking that same spiritual drink and that same spiritual meat. And they ate from the same rock. That was Yahushua Mashiach. This is Matthew chapter 6. This is eating from the rock right here. It says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. So, why are you doing opposite? For then you will have no reward from your Father in Shamayim. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no Turah before you, as the hypocrites do in the congregation, in the synagogue, in the Aydah, and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. He said, you ain't gonna get in the mouth like that. And get what happens. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that you will give it in secret, that your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Right, so this is Matthew chapter 6, verse 25. 6 verse 25. Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, and what you will eat and what you will drink, nor about your body, and what you will put on. Isn't that what they were doing in the wilderness? What you bring us out here to do? You came out here to die, didn't you? You brought us out here with no food, this raggedy food we got. This raggedy food we out here and ain't got no water. Ain't nothing out here. And he says, what you gonna drink? Nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not your life more than food, and your body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. This is what they should have done. He said, when you see all these things, he said, you're gonna see famines. Ain't no water out here. Pestilence. He said, what he told us to do? He said, when you see all these things, he said, look up. What you gonna see when you look up? Look at the birds in the air. That's what's gonna happen when you look up. When you see all these things happening in the world, you ain't got no reason to complain. All you gotta do is look up. The bird is still alive. The birds are still flying. Yahuwah tried to show you the serpent's still alive. You say ain't no water out here. How these animals still here? And get what he says. They neither sow nor reap. Isn't that what Katsar mean? Katsar mean to reap. He said they neither sow nor reap, nor gather in the barns. They don't do none of that stuff you complaining about. Ain't no water, ain't nothing. We can't plant, there ain't nothing we can do. We get this raggedy food. We can't even do nothing else but eat this food. And he says, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. He said, I feed all them birds. You ain't looked up yet. You've been complaining. He said, you've been complaining, mumbling. He said, all you gotta do is look up. He's like, man, the birds still flying, the eat still drinking. The serpent killing people, poisonous. They must be getting some water from somewhere. Go online, you go see a cobra drinking water. Man, get a water bottle and the cobra got to drink water. They getting some water from somewhere. And he says, are you not more valuable than they? You think Yahuwah brought all them people out? He said, you more valuable than them. And which of you, being anxious, can add a single hour to his lifespan? Yahuwah showed them in the wilderness. And get what he said. And why are you anxious about clothing, considering the lilies of the field? He said, look around, look around, and how they grow. Neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Shalom and all his kabod was not arrayed like one of these. But if Yahuwah so clothed the grass, the wheat of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown in the oven, will he not much more clothe you? O you of little amunah. Because that was their problem. They didn't actually have no belief in what was already said in the word, the bar. Oh, you got little amunah. And get what he said. Therefore, do not be anxious, saying, what we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? Because he sent fiery, poisonous mambas and snakes and copperheads and water moccasins and all types of things after people who did this. Why would you keep doing that? He says, for the Gentiles, the Goyim, seek after these things. Now you see why when he brings you out of Mizraim, he said, you still got the mindset. He's like, you got the mindset. And your heavenly Father knows you need them all. You think he didn't know all them people need that? I already know what you need. It says, but seek first the Malkuth, the kingdom, and his righteousness. Be very, very careful. And all these things will be added to you. Now you see why they didn't get it. And when he did send them something, he sent them poisonous serpents. He said, you create the serpents in your life. Verse 34 says, therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious of itself. Sufficient is the day is its own trouble. He's like, sufficient is the day. Back to Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 21. Devarim, chapter 21. Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 20, or actually, Numbers, chapter 21. Sorry. Numbers, chapter 21. Numbers, chapter 21, and verse 5. And it says, and the people spoke against Meshach and against Yahuwah Elohim and against Meshach. Why have you brought us out of Mizraim to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and we loathe this worthless food. Then Yahuwah sent fiery, poisonous snakes among the people, and they bit the people so that many people died in Yasharal. And the people came to Meshach and said, we have sinned, we have spoken against Yahuwah and against you. Pray to Yahuwah that he take away the poisonous snakes from us. So Meshach prayed for the people, and Yahuwah said to Meshach, make a fiery serpent, put a poisonous snake, and set it on a pole. Yeah. Put a poisonous snake and set it on a pole. And everyone who is bitten, when he sees it, shall live. He said, everybody who sees this poison, this snake, he said, who sees it will live. And get what it says. So Meshach made a bronze serpent and set it on a pole. And if a serpent, it says, and if a serpent bit anyone, he would look at the bronze serpent and live. And the people of Yasharal set out and camped in Obath, right? So he set that up, right? He said they will live, right? So this is the book of Psalms. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 103 and 1. Psalms 103 and 1. Tahalim 103 and 1. It says, Barak Yahuwah, O my soul, and all that is within me. Barak his Kudash name. For my name's sake, I'm going to do this. Barak is Yahuwah, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. Who forgives all your iniquity. Who heals all your diseases. Who redeems your life from the pit. And did what? Who redeems your life from the pit. Sorry. Who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy. Who satisfies you with good so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. He said, don't you forget about me. He said, don't you forget about me. Right? Going back to 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 18. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 18. Let's see, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 14. Therefore, my beloved, flee idolatry. I speak as to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I say. The cup of Barak that we Barak bless is it not a participation in the blood of Mashiach? The bread that we break, is it not the participation in the body of Mashiach? Because there is one bread, we who are many are one body, for we all partake of one bread. Consider the people of Yasharal. Are not those who eat sacrifices participants in the altar? What do I imply then? That food offered to idols is anything? Or that an idol is anything? No, I imply that what pagans sacrifice, they offer to demons, and not to Elohim. I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of Yahuwah and the cup of demons. He says, you cannot partake of the table of Yahuwah and the table of demons. Shall we provoke Yahuwah to jealousy? He said, don't you know Yahuwah is jealous, Elohim? He said, you gonna do that? You see what happened to those people who provoke Yahuwah to jealousy? He said, man, you ain't gonna be able to travel nowhere. Man, you're gonna have snakes and mambas. You're gonna go to Africa and snake mamba jump out the bush. You go to Everglades, a copperhead, a water moccasin jump out. Man, you go to the woods and the mountains, the rattlesnakes jumping out and chumming up trying to take you down. He said, you want to provoke Yahuwah to jealousy? Are you crazy? Are we stronger than he? Can you control the animals and the sea creatures and all that? Can you control the serpents? Can you control the caterpillar, the cankerworm? Can you control all these elements and the hurricanes and the storms and the tempests and the volcanoes? We ain't stronger than him. Verse 23 says, all things are lawful. You know how people say, I can do anything I want. Yeah, I can do it. All things are lawful, but all things are not helpful. He said, all things are, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor, right? He said, but the good of his neighbor, right? So this is the book of 2 Kings. 2 Kings. This is the book of 2 Kings. I think it's chapter 18, verse 1. Ba'ith Malachim, 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 1. Second Kings, Ba'ith Malachim, 18:1. In the third year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Yasharal, Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Yehuda, began to reign. He was 25 years when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did what was right in the eyes of Yahuwah, according to all that Daud his father had done. And he removed the high places, and broke the pillars, and cut down the Asherah. And he broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Meshach had made. Why he did that? He broke that thing into pieces. He put it on the pole, and he said, whoever looks on this serpent, he said, you're going to be healed. He broke in pieces that he had made. For unto those days, the people of Yasharal had made offerings to it. He said they made offerings to it. He said they started worshiping it. Shall we provoke Yahuwah to jealousy? Is he strong? Are we stronger than he? He said they started burning incense to the actual thing that healed the people who were born from poisonous snakes, because they got discouraged in the wilderness because they complaining about the things that they didn't get. And he's like, should we provoke him to jealousy? Why would we do that? Right? So this 2 Kings. That word for 2 Kings is that word for in verse 4. 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 4. That word, it said that word for it is called, what they call it is Nakushatan. They call it Nakushatan. Right? That copperhead in the desert. Something made of copper. Nakushatan. Yeah, Nakushatan. Nakushatan, right? But it says right here, verse 5 says, he trusted in Yahuwah. It says right here, for unto those days the people of Yasharal had made an offerings to it, and he called it Nahushatan. He trusted in Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yasharal, so that there was none like him among all the kings of Yehuda after him, nor among those who were before him. He said he trusted in him, for he held fast to Yahuwah. He did not depart from following him, but kept the commandments that Yahuwah your Elohim commanded Moshe. That's all he did. Because Abraham obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my laws, my statutes. He obeyed my voice. That's all he did. He said, I'm not making no graven image or any likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, or the birds of the Shamayim, that moves in the earth. I'm not worshiping the sun, moon, and the stars. And I ain't making no graven image. Matter of fact, I'm not going to make an excuse to do it. Shall I provoke Yahuwah to jealousy? Do you know how many animals out here? And Yahuwah was with him wherever he went and wherever he went out. He prospered. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and would not serve him. He struck down the Philistines as far as Gaza in his territory, from the watchtower in the fortified city. In the 14th year of Malach Kazekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, the Malach of Yasharal, right? So all that, right? This is Yuchanan. Actually, Yeshayahu chapter 52. Yeshayahu chapter 52, verse 13. Yeshayahu chapter 52, verse 10. Yeshayahu 52 and 10. It says, Yahuwah has bared his Kudash arm before the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our Elohim. He said, all the ends of the earth going to see the salvation of our Elohim. He said, how are you going to do that? Depart, go out from there, touch no unclean thing. Come out from among them and be separate. What did he say? And touch nothing unclean thing. Go out from the midst of her, purify yourselves. He said, who going to dwell on my Kudash mountain? It says, you who bear the vessels of Yahuwah, for you shall not go out in haste, and you shall not go out in flight, for Yahuwah will go before you. The Elohim of Yasharal will be your rear guard. He said, he's going to go out before you. Behold, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up. He shall be exalted. And many were astonished at you. His appearance was marred beyond human resemblance. Right? So this is Yuchanan chapter 12. John chapter 12, verse 27. Right. Yuchanan chapter 12, verse 27. It says, now is my soul troubled. John chapter 12, verse 27. And what shall I say, Father? Save me from this hour. For this purpose I came to this hour. Abba, kabod your name. Then a voice came from Shamayim, I have kaboded, and I will glorify it again. Why? The crowd that stood there and heard it said, it had thunder. Others said, and Malach had spoken to him. Yahusha answered, this voice came for your sake, not mine. Now is the judgment of this world. Now will the ruler of this world be cast out. And when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all people to myself. When the serpent is lifted up in the earth, all the people who look at it will be healed. And all nations are going to see the salvation of Yahuwah. And he said, when I lift it up from the earth, all people will be healed. Because I'm going to draw all people to myself. What happened when he said he broke down the altar, right? He said people started worshiping the serpent on the stake that Moshe made. So he said, you know what? I'm going to lift myself up. He said, I'm going to lift myself up. Right? So this is the book of Matthew chapter 27. Matthew 27 and verse 37. And it says, and over his head they put his charge against him, which read, this is Yahusha, the Malach of the Yahudim. Then the two robbers who were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left, and those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads, saying, you who will destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the son of Yahuwah, come down from the cross. Come down from the serpent. Come down from the stick. Come down from the cross. And do what? So also the chief priests and the scribes mocked him, saying, he saved others, he cannot save himself. You can't save yourself. He said, he is the king of Yasharal, let him come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusts in Elohim, that Elohim deliver him now. What happened after he broke down the stick? In 2 Kings. and he was right. He kept the commandments. He said he clave to Yahuwah more than they all. He said he clave to Yahuwah and kept the commandments that he gave him a shot. And matter of fact, he said he trusts in Yahuwah. He trusts in Yahuwah. Let Elohim deliver him now if he desires him. For he said, I am the son of Yahuwah. And the two robbers who crucified him in the same way, right? They said all that. But guess what happened? Guess what happened? Right? And so this is the book of same. This is the book of Yuchanan. Yuchanan chapter 3. Yuchanan chapter 3. Yuchanan chapter 3. John chapter 3 verse 1. John chapter 3 verse 1. It says, now there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Yahudim. You know, the same Nicodemus who was when he came to the Feast of Tabernacles, and they was and the scribes and the Pharisees like, you believe in him too? You from Galilee? You from that place too, huh? You defending this man? Yeah. A ruler of the Yahudim, this man came to Yahushua by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from Yahuwah, for no one can do these signs that you do unless Elohim is with him, unless you are God. Then he said, when the man broke down the serpent, he said, you know what? Yahuwah was with him. He said Yahuwah was with him when he broke down the blazing serpent that Yahuwah, Elohim, that he told Mashah that the people started to burn incense to. He said, Yahuwah was with him. And it says, and we know that you are a teacher come from Yahuwah, for no one can do these signs unless Yahuwah is with him. Yahushua answered him, truly I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the Malkuth of Elohim. He said, that's the only way you're going to see it. Nicodemus said to him, how can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born? He said, you're going to go back into your mother's womb? And he said, Yahushua answered, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water, the Ruach, he says, when one is born of water, the Ruach, he cannot enter the kingdom, born of water and Ruach, he cannot enter the Malkuth of Shamayim. That which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of Ruach is Ruach. Right? He said that which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of Ruach is Ruach, right? Going to Matthew chapter 27. We're going to just go to Matthew 27 and 34. Matthew 27 and 34. They offered him wine to drink mixed with gall, and when he had tasted it, he drank. He would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. And then what did they do? They sat down and kept watch over him, which means they were looking at him. He said, the son of Adam be lifted up, I'm going to draw people to myself. He said, all those who look at the serpent, he said, and it bites them, guess what happens? He said, they're going to be healed. He said, if it bites you, he said, you're going to be healed. Why then they sat down and looking at him? They watching him. And over his head, they put his charge against him. This is Yahushua, the Malach of the Yahudim. Right? This is the book of Acts. This is the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 4, chapter 2. This is Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2 and verse 12. It says, and all were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, what does this mean? But others, mocking, said, they are filled with new wine. But Qahalath, standing with the 11, lifted up his voice and addressed them, men of Yehuda Judea, and all who dwell in Jerusalem, men of Yehuda, and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and give ear to my words. For these people are not drunk, as you suppose, since it is the 3rd hour of the day. But this is what was uttered through the Nabi Yahuwah. In the last days it shall be, Elohim declares, that I will pour my ruach on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall naba, and your young men shall see hazum, and your old men shall tardema. They shall dream dreams. Didn't the wise men have dreams? They were in tune. Oh, didn't Yusuf have dreams? They were in tune. Matter of fact, and even on your male and female servants in those days, I will pour my ruach, and they shall prophesy. He said even the stranger is going to prophesy. Because in our households, we had male servants and female servants, and some were strangers. You, know your son, know your daughter, know your male servant, know your female servant, know your ox, know your donkey, know anything that's your neighbor's, right? Yeah, we have male and female servants. And he says what? And I shall show wonders in the Shamayim above, right? And signs on the earth, and blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the day of Yahuwah comes. That great and magnificent day. I'm gonna mess around. I'm gonna change the cosmos. I'm gonna change the moon. I'm gonna change the shamash. I'm gonna make the signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. Shall I, your mother and your father, bow down and give praise to you? I'm gonna make the actual sun. I'm gonna make things happen. And get what it says. And it shall come to pass that everyone who calls on the name of Yahuwah shall be saved. Men of Yasharal, hear these words. Yahushua of Nazareth, a man attested to Yahuwah, to you by Elohim, with mighty works and wonders and signs Elohim did through him in your midst. As you yourselves know, this Yahushua delivered up according to the definite plan of the foreknowledge of Yahuwah. You crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. Elohim raised him up, loosing the pains of death, because it was not possible for him to be held by it. All this happened, right? Going to verse 29. Brothers, I may say to you with confidence about the patriarch Daud, that he both died and was buried in his tomb unto this day. Being therefore a Nabi, knowing that Elohim had sworn an oath to him that he will not, he says that he would set one of his descendants on the throne, he foreknew and spoke about the resurrection of Mashiach, that he was not abandoned in Hades, nor did his flesh see corruption. This Yahushua Elohim raised up, and of that we are witnesses, being therefore exalted at the right hand of Elohim, and having received from the Father the promise of the Kudash Ruach, he has poured out on this that you yourselves are seeing and hearing. Verse 36, let all the house of Yasharal, because he had not dealt so with any other people. Let all the house of Yasharal know for a certain that Elohim has made him both Lord, Master, and Mashiach, this Yahushua whom you crucified. Now when they heard this, they were cut to the heart. They were bit. How you say? They were bit. And he said to Kaf and the rest of the Shalakim, brothers, what shall we do? Kaf said to them, repent. And stop your complaining. And stop your mumbling and grumbling about what you're going to eat and why you brought out here to die and why you going through all this stuff. He said, repent and stop. And he said, and Kaf said to them, repent and be immersed every one of you in the name of Yahushua for the forgiveness of sins. And you will receive the gift of the Kudash Ruach. If the son of Adam be lifted up, I'm going to draw people to myself. If you look on this fiery serpent and it bites you, guess what? It will be healed. And get what happened? He said, you will repent. And get what he said? You get the Kudash Ruach. He said you'll get forgiveness of sins. Right? This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 1, Hebrews chapter 6, verse 1. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 1. It says, therefore, let us leave the elementary doctrine of Mashiach and go on to maturity. He said, you still haven't gotten there yet. He said, going to maturity, not laying again the foundation of repentance from dead works and amunah towards Yahuwah, and the instructions about washing and laying on of hands, the resurrection of the dead, and eternal judgment. And this we will do, if Yahuwah permits. For it is impossible. They say impossible. In the case of those who have once enlightened, who have tasted of the Shamayim gift, and have shared in the Nukudash Ruach, and have tasted the good word of Yahuwah and the powers of the age to come, and then have fallen away. He said, you fall. He said, you fell. You fallen away. You start complaining and mumbling, what you gonna eat? What you gonna drink? Ain't no water out here. You ain't looked up yet, huh? You ain't seen the birds. You ain't seen the animals. They still alive. He said, y'all still talking about this stuff? He says, and then having fallen away, to restore them again to repentance, since they have crucified once again the Son of Elohim to their own harm, and holding him up in contempt. The same thing they did in the wilderness. He said they crucified him again. You know what happened? They had to kill. He said, put a serpent on the stick and lift it up. They had to do it all over again. He said, you think I'm going to do that again? And get what it says. For the land has drunk the rain that often falls on it, and produces a crop useful to those whose sake it is cultivated, receives a barak from Elohim. But if it bears thorns and thistles, it is worthless. How you say? He said it's baliyal. He said it is worthless and near to being cursed, and its end is to be burned. He said, I'm chosen to the furnace of affliction. You're going to suffer loss, but you yourselves shall be saved. And get what it says. Though we speak in this way, yet in your case, beloved, we feel sure of better things that belong to salvation. For Elohim is not unjust so as to overlook your work and love that you have done. You have shown in his name in serving the Kadashim, and still you do. Right, so this is the book of Right, so this is the book of Matthew. Actually, no. Let's go to this is the book of Romans chapter 8. Romans chapter 8. Romans chapter 8 verse 1. Romans chapter 8 verse 2. It says, for the law of the Ruach of life has set you free in Mashiach Yahusha, for the law of sin and death, from the law of sin and death. For Elohim has done what the law weakened by the flesh could not do. By sending his only Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, for sin, he condemned sin in the flesh, in order that the righteousness requirement of the Turah might be fulfilled in us. He said, why would you not want to do that? The righteous requirement. It says, who walk not according to the flesh, but according to the Ruach. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on things of the flesh. But those who live according to the Ruach set their minds on things of the Ruach. That's why they were complaining about their food and their water and what they ain't have, and they want to go to Mizraim, because they were walking according to the flesh. And Yahusha say, look up. Look at the birds, they flying. Look at the ground, look around you. I feed all these other creatures. So what make you think I ain't gonna feed you? It says, but those who will live according to the Ruach set their minds on things of the Ruach. For to set their mind on the flesh is death. Why do you think all those people died? He said all those people died from the serpent biting them, the poisonous snakes. He said the only reason they died because they working thinking of the flesh. But to set their mind on the Ruach is life and shalom. They would have life and peace if they would have set their mind on the Ruach. For the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to Elohim. That's why you think Yahuwah is like, y'all getting hostile, ain't you? Y'all talking, y'all saying a lot of stuff. For it does not submit to Yahuwah's law, his Torah, his law. Why do you think all these people ain't submitting to Yahuwah's Torah? That claim to believe in Yahushua Mashiach, that claim to believe in the Savior. Why do you think they ain't doing it? It's not rocket science. He says, indeed, if it cannot. They can't do it. Even if they wanted to. Those who are in the flesh cannot please Yahuwah. You cannot, however, he says, you, however, are not of the flesh, but in the Ruach. If, in fact, the Ruach of Yahuwah dwells in you, anyone who does not have the Ruach of Mashiach does not belong to him. He said, you don't belong to me. There's another person you belong to. He says, but if Mashiach is in you, although the body is dead because of sin, the Ruach is life because of what? Because of righteousness. It'll be our righteousness if we keep his commandments. Why do you think the man broke down the altar? And the serpent on the stick that they bow down and burn incense to. He's like, man, I can't keep this stuff up. There's a lot of things you can't even do. Because other people are going to start worshiping it. Because people walk according to the flesh for some reason, still. And he says, verse 11 says, if the Ruach of him who raised Yahusha from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Mashiach Yahusha from the dead will also give life to your body, mortal bodies, through his Ruach who dwells in you. Why do you think he told him to lift the serpent up and let whoever sees the serpent and it bites him? Get what happened? I'm going to make you come back to life. I'm going to raise you up. Because the Ruach is in you. Or you mean the venom is inside of you? That's the only way. I put the venom inside of you. That same venom that killed you, that same venom that make you alive. That same word, the bar that killed you, is the same the bar that make you alive. Right? He said it's the same thing. Right? So we look at all that. So we look at this as the book of, going back to the Testament of Asher. Testament of Asher, chapter 1, verse 10. Testament of Asher, chapter 1, verse 10. A person then may with words help the good for the sake of the evil, yet the issue of the action leadeth to mischief. Right? And it says right here, there is a man that showeth no compassion upon him who serveth his turn in evil. And this both two aspects, but the whole is evil. And there is a man that loveth him that worketh evil, because he would prefer even to die in evil for his sake. And concerning this, it is clear that it both two aspects, but the whole is an evil work. Though indeed he have love, yet he is wicked who concealeth what is evil for the sake of the good name. Why? Because they don't want to reveal the evil that they've done, just to have a good name amongst other people. And he says, but the end of the action tendeth unto evil. And get what it says, another stealeth, doeth unjustly, plundereth, defraudeth, and withal pitieth the poor. This too both a twofold aspect, but the whole is evil. He said it's still evil. He who defraudeth his neighbor provoketh Yahuwah, Elohim, and sweareth falsely against the Most High, Yahuwah, and yet pitieth the poor, Yahuwah, who commandeth the law, he setteth at naught and provoketh, and yet he refresheth the poor. He defileth the soul and maketh gay the body. How you say? He killeth many and pitieth a few. This too a twofold aspect, but the whole is evil. Right? Last verse says, another committeth adultery and fornication, and abstaineth from meats. He said, you abstain, you a vegetarian. He said, another committeth adultery and fornication, and abstain from meats. He said, I'm a vegan. I eat plants and herbs like Adam in the garden, but I fornicate, commit adultery, right? And then what you do? And when he fasted, he doeth evil. And then you fasted. And get what he said? And by the power of his wealth overwhelmeth many. And then he rich. Notwithstanding his excessive wickedness, he doeth the commandments. What? This too have twofold aspect, but the whole is evil. He said, you still wicked. You rich, but you commit adultery and fornication, and you a vegan, you're a vegetarian, and you fast and do all these things. You got wealth and money, and then you still keep the commandments. He said, you still wicked. And then he says, this too have a twofold aspect, but the whole is evil. Such men are hairs clean, like those that divide the hoof, but in very deed are unclean. For Elohim in the tables of the commandments have thus declared, but do not ye, my children, wear two faces like unto them. He said, two-faced. He said, don't do it. He said, don't make two faces of them, of goodness and of wickedness, but cleave unto the goodness only. For Elohim hath his habitation therein, and men desire it. Verse 21, but from wickedness flee away, destroying the evil inclination by good works. For they that are double-faced serve not Elohim, but their own lusts, so that they may please Baalar and men like unto themselves. He said they want to please the people just like them. He said people who do the same thing you do. How you say birds of a feather flock together. That's what they do. All right, so this is the book of, where are we going? Yeah, so we're going to the book of Hebrews. The book of Hebrews chapter 9. Hebrews chapter 9. Hebrews chapter 9. Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 2. Hebrews chapter 9 verse 2. Hebrews chapter 9 verse 2. This Hebrews chapter 9 verse 2, and it says, for a tent was prepared, the first section, in which were the lampstand, the menorah, and the table, and the bread of his presence. It's called the Kudash place. Behold, the second curtain was a second section called the most Kudash place, having the golden altar of incense and the ark of the covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden urn holding the manna, and Aaron's staff that budded, how you say, that zitzitz, and the tablets of the covenant. Above it were the cherubim, the kabod of the overshadowing of the mercy seat. And these things we cannot even speak in detail. These preparations have been made the priest go regularly into the first section performing the ritual duties, but in the second only the High Kahan goes, and he but once a year, and not without taking blood, which he offers for himself and for the unintentional sins of the people. But this Kudash Ruach indicates that the way into the Kudash place is not yet opened as long as the first section is still standing, which is symbolic for this present age. That's what it says. According to the arrangement of the gifts and sacrifices are offered, they cannot perfect the conscience, They cannot perfect these two-faced people. Of the worshipers, but deal only with food and drink. These are all carnal, flesh. When you think about fleshly things, that which is born of flesh is flesh. That which is born of the ruach is ruach. They who are of the flesh, it leaves you death. But deal only with food and drink and various washings and regulations for the body imposed until the time of reformation. But when Mashiach appeared as a High Kahan of the good things that have to come, then though the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is not the creation, he entered once for all in the Kudash place by means of the blood not by the means of blood and goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls and sprinkling defiled persons with the ashes of a heifer sanctify the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Mashiach, who though the eternal Ruach offered himself without blemish to Elohim, purifying our conscience from evil works, dead works. That's what happens. You get dead works. That's death. It's going to be according to the flesh, to serve the living Elohim. Therefore, he is the mediator of a new covenant, so that those who are called may receive the promise of eternal inheritance, since death has occurred that redeems them from the transgression committed under the first covenant. For where a will is involved, the death of the one who made it must be established. For a will takes effect only at death. What happened when they died? With the serpents. Since it is not enforced as long as the one who made it is alive. That's why you think he killed those people. Why do you think he had sent poisonous snakes? As long as they were still alive, nothing better could come to reveal them and to bring them back alive. For where a will is involved, the death of the one who made it must be established. For a will takes effect only at death, since it is not enforced as long as one who made it is alive. Therefore, not even the first covenant was inaugurated without blood. For when every commandment of the Torah had been declared by Mashiach to all the people, he took the blood of the calves and goats and water and scarlet and wool and hyssop and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant of Elohim commanded you." Right. So we're going to Hebrews chapter 10 verse 20. Hebrews chapter 10 verse 20. Hebrews chapter 10 verse 20. 10 verse 19. Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the Kodesh place by the blood of Yahushua Mashiach, because if you kill an animal and you try to enter the covenant of Yahuwah through the killing of an animal, goats, and all these, and sprinkling blood and all that, he's like, man, you wasting your time. You wasting your time. That's according to the flesh. That ain't got nothing to do with no ruach. He says, by the new and living way that he opened for us the curtain that is through his flesh, and since we have a great priest over the house of Elohim, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of Amunah, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience. Your double two-faced mind. and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and what? And good works. Not two-faced. How you say, I do good, you say you do good, but do you do evil? You say to good works. Why are you provoking? Not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. For if we go on sinning deliberately, you start complaining about your food and your water and what you don't have deliberately. After receiving the knowledge of the truth, there is no longer remains a sacrifice for sin. Ain't gonna be no serpent lifted up in the wilderness that he said you bite you and heal you. Right, and then it says, but a fearful expectation of judgment, he said. What happened to those people? And a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. He said, you're going to go through the furnace of affliction, and you're going to suffer loss. Anyone who has set aside the law of Messiah died without mercy at the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much more worse punishment do you think we will be deserved by the one who has trampled underfoot the Son of Yahuwah and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified, and has, he says, by which he was sanctified and has outraged the Ruach of Khan? For we know him who said, vengeance is mine, I will repay. And again, Yahuwah will judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hand of the living Elohim. He said it is fearful. Right? It's a fearful thing. Right, so this is First Enoch. This is First Enoch. This is First Enoch, Pseudepigrapha, chapter 89, verse 10. First Enoch, Pseudepigrapha, chapter 89, verse 10. It says, then they began to bear the beasts of the field and the birds. There rose out of all the classes of the populations, lions, leopards, wolves, snakes, hyenas, wild boars, foxes, squirrels, swine, hawks, eagles, kites, string cows, ravens. Among them there was also born a snow white cow. Then they began to bite one another among themselves. They began to do what? They began to bite one another among themselves. I mean, you're a serpent. You a snake. They say you're a cobra. It says, bite one another by themselves. It says, that snow white cow, which was born in their midst, begat a wild donkey, and a snow white cow with it. And the wild donkey multiplied. And the cow which was born from him bore a black wild boar, and the snow white sheep. The former then bore a healthy beast, and the latter bore 12 sheep. And what happened? And when those 12 sheep had grown up, they gave away one of their own members to the donkeys, which in turn gave him away to the wolves, so that this sheep grew up in the midst of wolves. Then Yahuwah brought the 11 sheep to dwell with him, and to pasture in the midst of the wolves. And they multiplied and became many flocks of sheep. Then the wolves began to fear them. So they tortured them until the little ones were being killed, for they cast away their little ones into the river of the great quantity of water. So those sheep began to cry out on behalf of the little ones, and to complain unto their Elohim, their master. Then one sheep, which had been saved from the wolves, fled and escaped to the wild donkeys. But I saw the sheep continuing to lament and cry, and they kept praying to their master with all their strength until until Yahuwah, the master of the sheep, descended at their entreatments from a lofty palace, arriving to visit them. And he called, what did he say? And he called that sheep which had escaped from the wolves, and told him concerning the wolves that he should warn the wolves not to touch the sheep. And what happened? The sheep then went to the wolves in accordance to the word of Yahuwah, together with the other sheep which he had met, so that the two of them went the two of them went on and arrived together into the assembly of those wolves, and spoke to them and warned them not to touch the sheep. But thenceforth I saw how the wolves even intensified their pressure upon the sheep. They said that the sheep cried aloud. They cried aloud with their strength. Then their master came to the rescue of the sheep, whereupon they began to whip those wolves. So the wolves began to make lamentation, but the sheep therefore became quiet and stopped crying aloud. I continued to see the sheep until they departed from the presence of the wolves, and the wolves until their eyes were dazzled. Right? All that took place, right? But it said he said when the 12 sheep had grown up, they gave away one of their own members to the donkeys, which in turn gave him away to the wolves, right? Right, so this is a book of going to the book of Yochanan. It's the book of Yochanan. Actually, let's go to Luke chapter. Chapter 22, Luke chapter 22, verse 12. It says, and he will show you a large upper room and furnished, prepared in there. And they went and found it just as he had told them. And they prepared the Pesach. And when the hour came, he reclined at the table, and the Shalakim with him. And he said to them, I earnestly desire to eat the Pesach with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it until it be fulfilled in the Malkuth, the Shema of Elohim. And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he said, take this and divide it among yourselves. For I tell you that now on I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until I eat it in the Malkuth of Allah, eat it in the kingdom of Elohim comes. He said, eat it until the kingdom of Elohim comes. It says, and he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, this is my body which is given for you in remembrance of me. And likewise the cup, after they had eaten, saying, this cup is poured out for you in the new berith in my blood. But behold, the hand of him who betrays me is with me on the table. For the son of Adam goes as it has been determined, but woe to the man by whom he is betrayed. And they began to question one another, which of them it could be who was going to do this. And get what happened. A dispute rose among them as to which one was to be regarded as the greatest. And he said to them, the king of the Goyim exercised lordship over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors, but not so with you, right? So they're trying to figure this out, right? So this is a book. So going to Yochanan, chapter 6, verse 66. Yukonot 6, verse 66. Yukonot 6:56. And after this, many of the disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. So Yahushua said to the 12, how many donkeys he had? He said the 12 grew up. He says, and when those 12 sheep, he had 12 sheep had grown up, they gave away one of their own members to the donkeys, which in turn gave him away to the wolves. Right, so this is verse 67. So Yahushua, Yukonot 6:67. So Yahushua said to the 12, do you want to go away as well? Simon Koph answered him, Master, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life, and we have believed and have come to know that you are the Qahalath one of Elohim. Yahushua answered them, did I not choose the 12 sheep? Yet one of you is a devil, a Satan. He spoke of Yehuda, the son of Simon Iscariot, for he was one of the 12, was going to betray him. Right, so this is the book of Matthew, chapter 10. Actually, Matthew chapter 7, verse 13. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. 7:13. It says, enter in at the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Beware of false Nabi'im who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. He said they look like you, but they say they're ravenous wolves. He said, you gave me over to the wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but a diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. You can't have two-faced people. Just like the Testament of Asher said, you can't be two-faced. You can't be a good tree, but you still evil. You say you two-faced. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. He said you're going through the furnace of affliction. Thus, you will recognize them by their fruits. Right? So going to 10:16, actually, Luke chapter 10, verse 1. Luke, 10:1. After this, Yahuwah appointed 72 others. The master appointed 72 others and sent them on ahead of the two by two, in every town and place where he himself was about to go. And he said, the harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the master of the harvest to send out more laborers in the harvest. Go your way. Behold, I am sending you out as a lambs in the midst of wolves. He said, two-faced people. He said, you're going to be surrounded by them. He said, two-faced. Carry no money bag, nor knapsack, nor sandals, and greet no one on the road. Wherever your house you enter, first say, Shalom be to this. And if the Son of Peace, Shalom is there, your Shalom will rest upon him. Right? He said it will rest upon him. Right, so this is the book of Matthew, chapter 12, verse 9. Matthew chapter 12, verse 9. Matthew chapter 12, verse 9. He went on from there and entered their synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand. And he asked them, is it lawful to heal on Shabbat? So that they may accuse him. And he said to them, which one of you who has a sheep, if it is fallen into a pit on the Shabbat, will not take hold of him and lift him out. Of how much more value is this man than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Shabbat. Right? He said it's lawful to do good on the Shabbat. He said this is lawful, right? Sorry, I went to That's not Verse 13 says, then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And the man stretched out his hand, and it was restored, healthy like the other. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him how to destroy him. Why? He said that the wolves were trying to figure out how to destroy him, right? Going back to 1 Enoch, chapter, we're going to finish 89 and 12. 1 Enoch, it says, and the snow white cow with it, and the wild donkey multiplied. And the cow which was born from him bore a black wild boar and a snow white sheep. The former then bore healthy beasts, and the latter bore 12 sheep. Which, he says, when those 12 sheep had grown up, they gave away one of their own members to the donkeys, which in turn gave him away to the wolves. So this sheep grew up in the midst of the wolves. Right? He said it grew up in the midst of the wolves, right? The midst of the wolves, right? So this is this is Matthew chapter 27, verse 3. Matthew 27 and 3. It says, then when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Yahushua was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. They said, what is that to us? See it to yourself. He said, you see what you just did? Right, so going Matthew 26, verse 14. Then one of the 12, because he said he gave one of the 12 over. Then the sheep gave one of the 12 over to the donkeys. And then it says, then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, went to the wolves and said, what will you give me if I deliver him over to you? He said, then well, he gave one of them over to the wolves. He said eventually he gave him over to the wolves. He gave one over to the sheep gave one over to the donkeys, and then eventually he gave him over to the wolves. He said, and he said, what will you give me if I deliver him over to you? And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, he saw opportunity to betray him. He said, I'll give you money. Right? He said, I'll give you money. Right? So he said, I'll give you money. Right? So this is verse 29. It says, Matthew 27, 29. Then was fulfilled, actually going back, he says, yeah. And it says, and throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed and went and hanged himself. But the chief priest, taking the pieces of silver, it is not lawful to put them in the treasury, since it is blood money. He said they two-faced it, like testament of Asher. It's still evil, though. They took the counsel and bought the potter's field in a burial place for strangers. It's still evil, though. He did this good deed for the strangers. It's still evil, though. Therefore, the field has been called the field of blood to this day. Where is that field at? Some people probably got their house right on top of it. And it says, then was fulfilled what would have been spoken by the Nabi Yirmiyahu, saying, they took the 30 pieces of silver for the price of him of whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Yasharal, And they gave them the potter's field. It says, as Yahuwah, as the master directed me. As the master directed me. All right, this is... This is the book of Matthew, chapter 10, verse 16. Matthew 10, 16. It says, behold, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Two-faced people. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of men, for they will deliver you over to courts and flog you in their Aydah, their congregations, and you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them and the Goyim. Right? He said, these are just wolves. Right? This is right here. All right, so this is going back to First Enoch, chapter 14, actually chapter 89, and verse 13. Then bore a healthy beast, and the latter bore 12 sheep. When those 12 sheep had grown up, they gave away one of their own members to the donkeys, which in turn gave him away to the wolves. So this sheep grew up in the midst of the wolves. Then Yahuwah brought the 11 sheep to dwell with him. And you say, what? He brought the 11. And to pasture in the midst of the wolves. And they multiplied and became many flocks of sheep. Then the wolves began to fear them. Why? So they tortured them until the little ones were being killed, for they cast away their little ones into the river of a great quantity of water. So those sheep began to cry aloud on behalf of the little ones and complain unto their Elohim. He said, all this takes place. But he said, why? Right, this is the book of... It's a lot to explain. But here we go. This is... It's the book of Exodus, chapter 2. This is Exodus chapter 2. And it says, Exodus chapter 2, verse 1. It says, now a man from the house of Louis went and took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could not hide him no longer, she took him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed in bitumen and pitch, and she put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the river bank. And his sister stood at a distance to show what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. While her young woman walked beside the river, she saw the basket among the reeds and sent for her servant woman, and she took it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. And she took pity on him and said, this is one of the Hebrew children. And he said, one of the 12 tribes. They one of them. Then his sister sat in Pharaoh's daughter. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call you a nurse for the Abri woman to nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the girl went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. He said, what is it? Why is that important? Right? This is the book of Right. This is the book of Exodus. Book of Exodus chapter 1 verse. Exodus chapter 1 verse 11. Exodus chapter 1 verse 11. Exodus chapter 1 verse 15. And it says, Then the king of Mizraim said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and Puah, when you serve as a midwife to the Abri women, and you see on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, you shall live. But the midwives feared Yahuwah and did not, it says, and did not do as the king of Mizraim commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Mizraim called the midwives and said to him, Why have you done this? And let the male children live. And the midwife said to Pharaoh, Because the Abri women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwives come to them. So Elohim dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared Elohim, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, every son that is born to the Abri, you shall cast into the Nile. But you shall let the daughter live. He said, man, you should throw them in the water. We're going back to first Enoch. First Enoch chapter 1, verse 15. Then the wolves began to fear them. You know what the Mizraim did? They began to fear them. So they tortured them until their little ones were being killed. For they cast away their little ones into the river of a great quantity of water. That's what they do when they fear you. They throw you in the river. That's what the scribes and the Pharisees did to Yahushua. They hire somebody to kill you when they start to fear you. That's what they do. Matter of fact, the 12 gave over one to the donkeys, and then he eventually gave you over to the wolves, two-faced men. Right? And then it says right here, then the wolves began to fear them, so they tortured them until their little ones were being killed. For they cast away their little ones into the river with great quantity of water. So those sheep began to cry aloud on behalf of their little ones and to complain unto the master. It says, Then one sheep which had been saved from the wolves fled and escaped to the wild donkeys. Right? He said, then one of them fled and escaped. And he left. Right? He said he left. He said, why is this important? Right, so this is we almost finished. This is the book of Exodus. This is the book of Exodus chapter 2 verse 14. And he answered, Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill us as you killed the Egyptian? Then Mashah was afraid and thought, Surely this thing is known. And when Pharaoh heard it, he sought to kill Mashah. When Mashah fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, he went all the way to the wild donkeys. And he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. And they came and drew water and filled the troughs of water, filled the troughs to the water their flocks. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Mashah stood up and saved them and watered their flock. First Enoch chapter 1, verse 15. And then it says right here, verse 16, Then one of the sheep who had been saved from the wolves fled and escaped to the wild donkeys. But I saw the sheep continuing to lament and cry, and they kept praying to Yahuwah with all their strength until Yahuwah, the master of the sheep, descended at their entreatment. He said it descended at their entreatment, right? Right, this is the book of Exodus. It's the book of Exodus. It's the book of Exodus chapter 3, verse Exodus chapter 3, verse 7. Then Yahuwah said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Mizraim, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their suffering, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Mizraim. He said, why Enoch, some 1,000 years ago, putting all these words in a parable of a bunch of animals, and donkeys, and cows, and goats, and all these things. Why? Even though as the translator wrote. Because it's to show you a person. Not only to show you Yahushua Mashiach, but it's to show you your story in the future. Because we were cultivating animals. We were animal people. We understood them. And it says, they cried to the taskmaster, I know their suffering, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of Mizraim, and to bring them out of the land to a good broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and he said places of Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, and Perizzites, and the Hivites and Jebusites. And now behold, the cry of the people of Yasharal, you mean the 12 sheep, has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression which the Egyptians oppressed them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Yasharal, out of Mizraim. He's like, to bring my people out, right? This is the last couple things. Last couple things, right? This is Uganon, chapter 18, verse 1. Actually, Uganon, chapter 19. Uganon, chapter 19, verse 28. It says, and after this, Yahushua, knowing that all was now finished, said, I fulfill the scripture, I thirst. A jar of sour wine stood there. And they put a sponge full of sour wine on a hyssop branch and held it to his mouth. And when Yahushua received sour wine, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave it the ruach. Right? Skipping over to it's going to Matthew chapter 27. Matthew 27, verse 61. Matthew 27, actually 27 and Matthew 27, 47. It says, some of the bystanders hearing it said, this man is calling for Aydah. And one of them at once ran and took a sponge and filled it with sour wine and put it on a reed and gave him to drink. But the other said, wait, let's see whether Aydah will come and save him. And Yahushua cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up to his ruach. He said, because the cries of the people in Yasharal, in Mizraim, they reached unto me. And I come to deliver them out of the hand of the oppressors. So who is the oppressor? Here. Yasharal and Yehuda. He said, you were the oppressors. You are the wolves. He said, you are the wolves. He said, you are the wolves. He said, you are the wolves. This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 22, verse 26. Her priests have done violence to my Torah, my law, and have profaned my Kudash things. They have made no distinction between the Kudash and the common. Neither have they taught the difference between the unclean and the clean. And they have disregarded my Shabbats, so that I am profaned among them. Her princes in her midst are like wolves. I send you like sheep among wolves. Tearing the prey, shedding blood, destroying lives to get dishonest gain. They two-faced it. Just like the Testament of Asher said. And her Nabi are smeared with whitewash for them. And the Nabi cover for them. Seeing false visions and divining lies for them, for these same wolves. Right? For them. Saying, thus says Yahuwah Elohim, when Yahuwah has not spoken. They're doing it for them. He said, they wolves, two-faced. The people of the land have practiced extortion and committed robbery. They have oppressed the poor and the needy, and have extorted from the sojourner without justice. And I sought for a man among them who should build up the wall and to stand in the breach before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. And yet what happened? Therefore I have poured out my indignation upon them, and I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Why do you think? He said, you're gonna go through the fire and you're gonna suffer loss. Yet what happened? I have returned their way upon their heads if you go on sinning willfully. After you receive the knowledge of the truth, there remain no sacrifice for no sins, but judgment, declares Yahuwah Elohim. He said, declares Yahuwah Elohim, right? So this is the book of going back to Acts. This is the last couple things. This is absolutely no, we're not gonna do that. All right, so this is Nazarene Acts, Nazarene Truth of the Nazarenes. The Truth of the Nazarenes, page 153. Chapter 61, the Truth of the Nazarenes, the Gospel of the Nazarenes, chapter 61, and verse 3. It says, in those days, those that have power shall gather to themselves lands and riches of the earth of their own lust. Let's go back to verse 1. And it says, Yahushua sat upon the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? And Yahushua answered and said to them, take heed that no wolf deceive you, no prophet deceive you, no Nabi deceive you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach, and shall deceive many. They're going to be a wolf. They're going to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes, and all these are the beginning of sorrows. There are going to be pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. Verse 3 says, and in those days, he says, in those days, those that have power shall gather. Who mean power? They got Koach. They got Kayu. That's called power. That's called wealth. They already have it. Those who have, he says, and in those days, those that have power or wealth shall gather to themselves lands and riches of the earth for their own lust. He said, you got the money to do it. Everybody poor. Everybody ain't got money to do that. For their own lust, and shall oppress the many who lack and hold them in bondage. He gonna capture you like a caged bird. Because they gonna hold you in bondage. They gonna turn you into slaves. They two-faced. Like Pharaoh. And guess what happens? And use them to increase their riches. And that's what they do. Because they wolves. That's what wolves do. They look like they in sheep's clothing, but they wolves. And use them to increase their riches. And they shall oppress even the beasts of the field. They're going to destroy the animals. And what else? Setting up the abominable thing. They're going to put idols up. Then what they're going to do? But Yahuwah shall send them his messenger, and shall proclaim the Torah, which men have hidden by their traditions. And guess what he's going to do? And those that transgress shall reap the harvest of their deeds. You're going to reap your destruction. You're going to reap your vipers, your serpents, your copperheads, and your water moccasins. You're going to reap your serpents. You're going to reap it. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you. After you get all that money, because you're going to start coming at them. You're going to start talking. You're going to start telling them. Then they're going to come after you. And guess what's going to happen? And shall kill you. And you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended. After all that happened, then that's when people are going to start getting offended. And what happens? And shall betray one another. And shall hate one another. And many false Nabi'im, mean wolves in sheep's clothing, shall arise. And shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. He says the same shall be saved. Right? So this is the last thing. Last verse. Right. Last couple things. This is this is book of Revelations. Hazum. Revelations. Actually, yeah. Book of Revelations. Book of Revelations, chapter 11. Book of Revelations, Hazum, chapter 11, verse 1. Then I was given a measuring rod, like a staff, and I was told, rise and measure the temple of Elohim and the altar and those who worship there. But do not measure the court outside the temple. Leave that out. It is to be given over to the nations, the Goyim, and they will trample the Qahalath city for 42 months. And I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses. And they will nabba for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stand before Yahuwah and the earth. And if anyone will harm them, fire pours out of their mouth and consumes their foes. And if anyone would harm them, this is how he is doomed to be killed. They have power to shut the sky, that no rain may fall during the days of their nabba. And they have power over the waters to turn them into blood, and to strike the earth with every kind of plague, as often as they desire. And when they have finished their testimony, the beast that rises from the bottomless pit will make war on them and conquer them and kill them. And their dead bodies will lie in the streets of the great city. Symbolically, it's called Sodom and Mizraim, where Yahuwah was crucified, where the Master was crucified. For 3.5 days, some of the peoples and the tribes and the languages and the nations will gaze at their dead bodies and refuse to let them be placed in their tomb. And those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them and make merry and exchange presents, because these 2 Nabi'im have been a torment to those who dwell on the Earth. But after 3.5 days, a breath of life from the Elohim entered them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them. Then they heard a loud voice from Shamayim saying to them, come up here. And they went up into Shamayim in a cloud, and their enemies watched them. And their enemies watched. Right, this is the last verse. Alright, this is the last verse. Alright, this is Dabari Hayamim, 2nd Dabari Hayamim, chapter 15. 2nd Chronicles, chapter 15, verse 1. It says, the Ruach of Elohim came upon Azariah, the son of Oded, and he went out to meet Asa and said to him, Hear me, Asa, and all Yehuda and Benjamin. Yahuwah is with you while you are with him. But if you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. For a long time Yasharal was without the true Elohim and without a teaching Kahan, without law. What happened when the people of Samaria didn't have a teacher? They teach them the way of the land. Yahuwah sent lions among them and slew them. They had judgment. But when in their distress they turned to Yahuwah, the Elohim Yasharal, and sought him, he was found by them. In those times there was no peace to him who went out, or to him who came in. For great disturbances afflicted all the inhabitants of the lands. And that's what happened today. This is happening today. They were broken in pieces. Nation was crushed by nation, and city by city. Wars and rumors of wars. For Elohim troubled them with every sort of distress. Wars, earthquakes, famines, pestilence, disease. All types of distresses. But what did he say to you? But you. Take courage. Do not let your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded. Because remember what Matthew 6 said. He said, your work shall be rewarded. He said, your work shall be rewarded. All right, this is the book of Revelations. Hazum. This book of Revelations. This is the book of Revelations. Hazum. This is the book of Revelations. Hazum. Revelation chapter 22 and verse 1. 22 and 6. It says, and he said to me, these words are trustworthy and true. And the master and Yahuwah, the Elohim of the spirits of the Nabi'im, has sent his Malachim to show his servants what must soon take place. And behold, I am coming soon. Barak is the one who kept the words of the Nabi, the prophecy, the Naba of this book. Ayukanan am one who heard and saw these things. And when I heard and saw them, I fell down to worship at the feet of the Malachim who showed them to me. But he said to me, you must not do that. I am a fellow servant who with you and your brothers, the Nabi'im, and with those who keep the words of the book, worship Elohim. And he said to me, do not seal the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. Let the evildoer still do evil. If you're going to be two-faced, he said, let you continue to be two-faced. Let the evildoer still do evil, and let the filthy still be filthy, and let the righteous still do right, and Kudash still be Kudash. Behold, I am coming soon, bringing my recompense with me, to repay each one according to what he has done. I am the Aleph and the two. I am the Aleph and the two. The first and the last, the beginning and the end. Barak are those who wash their robes, so that they may have the right to the tree of life, and that they may enter the city by the gates, the 12 gates. Outside are dogs, sorcerers and sexual immoral, murderers and idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. Yahushua sent my Malachim to testify to you these things. I am the root and the descendant of David, Dawid, and the bright and morning star. I'm like the dawn. Verse 18. I warn everyone who hears the words of this prophecy of this book. If anyone adds to them, Elohim adds to him the plagues described in this book. If anyone takes away from the words of this Nabi, Elohim takes away his share in the tree of life, in the Kudash city, which are described in this book. So guess what it says? He who testifies to these things says, surely I am coming soon. Amen. Come, Yahushua Mashiach. He said come, right? So this is Ode Shaloma, Odes of Solomon. This is Odes of Solomon. This is Ode Shaloma, Odes of Solomon. Odes of Solomon. Odes of Solomon. Chapter 40. Odes of Solomon, chapter 40, verse 1. As the honey drips on the honeycomb of bees, and the milk flows from a woman who loves her children, so also is my hope upon you, O my Elohim. As a spring gushes forth its water, so my heart gushes forth to praise Yahuwah. My lips bring praise to him, and my tongue becomes sweet by his anthems, and my members are anointed by his oaths. Verse 4 says, my face rejoices in his exaltation, and my spirit exults in his love, and my nature shines in him, and he who is afraid will trust in him. And they fear Yahuwah. Just like he talks about how he fear Yahuwah, he said he feared Yahuwah, and he broke down the brazen serpent that people burn incense to. And then it says, and salvation will be established in him. Because he looked at the serpent, he will heal. He said, don't forget Yahuwah who heal all your diseases. And get what happens? And his possessor is immortal life. And those who receive it are incorruptible. He said, those who receive it are incorruptible. Right, so this is the last thing. Right, so this is 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 52. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last Turah, at the 7th month, the 7th trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable. They're going to rise from the dead. They're going to get up. They're going to get bit. What happened to the people that were dead? They saw the serpent, they were bit. And we shall be changed. For the perishable body must put on imperishable, and the mortal body must put on immortality. The perishable puts on the imperishable, and the mortal puts on immortality. Then shall come to pass, saying, as is written, death is swallowed up in victory. Why do you think he lifted up the serpent? And there he said, whoever looks on it, you get bit, you'll live. Because death is swallowed in victory. I won. Yahushua, I won. Oh death, where is your victory? Oh death, where is your sting? What do you mean, where is your sting? You got bit yet? He said, where's your sting? The sting of death is sin. Why do you think people die? But guess what it said? And the power of sin is the law, the Torah. But thanks be to Elohim, who gives us the victory through our master, Yahushua Mashiach. Therefore, my beloved brothers and sisters, be steadfast and immovable, always abounding in the works of Yahuwah, knowing that in the master your labor is not in vain. Right? Because he said, Ketzar. He said, all that stuff you're doing is not in vain. Because if you stay in this in vain, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to start mumbling, grumbling, complaining. You're going to start making idols. You're going to start losing courage. You're going to start oppressing, being two-faced, You're going to start doing things that the Testament of Asher said. You're going to start walking. And he said, then Yahuwah ain't going to be well pleased with you. And then guess what happens? One will not enter the Malkuth of Shamayim. All at the same time. But he said, always abounding. And you can't abound by still sticking at the elementary principles. He said you got to go on to perfection. Right, so we look at all that. We look at Yahushua Mashiach. Look at the light of life. Look at the life that he lived in the flesh. And we should not forget his benefits. For his benefits is life eternal. And his understanding is life eternal. For even as a 12 sheep and one and then the sheep give over one to the donkey, and then eventually he'll deliver over to the wolves. We look at the wolves in this world. We look at the wolves that's the surround us, knowing that the life that Yahushua lived in the flesh is a permanent life if one takes it on. For we live in this world, we are not of it. Right? We live in this world, we are not of it, and we should walk even as he walked. Even as he lived in this world, we should live in this world, right? So this is the Essene. This is the Essene of truth. The Essenes. This is the Essenes. All right, so this is the Essene. This is Essene, the Malach of life. This is page 171. This is 171. And it says right here, all living things are near to Elohim, that the scripture which are without life, Elohim has made life in all living things, that they might by the ever-living word teach the law of the Turah of the Heavenly Father and the Heavenly Mother to the sons of men, Adam. Elohim wrote not the laws in the pages of a book, but in thy heart and in thy ruach. They are in thy breath, thy blood, thy bones, in thy flesh, in thine eyes, and in every little part of thy body. They are present in the air, and in the water, and in the earth, and in the plants, and in the sunbeams, and in the depths, and in the heights. They all speak to thee. It said they all speak to thee. They all speak to thee. All right, going to the next page. It says, they all speak to thee, that thou mayest understand the tongue and the will of the living Elohim. And the scriptures are the works of man, but life and all its hosts are the works of Elohim. First, O great Creator, thou didst create the Shamayim heavenly powers, and thou didst reveal the Shamayim laws. Thou gavest unto us understanding from thy own mind. And thou madest our body life. We are grateful, Heavenly Father, for all thy manifold gifts of life, for the precious things of Shamayim, for the dew, for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, for the precious things put forth by the moon, for the great things of the ancient mountains, for the precious things of the lasting hills, and for the precious things of the earth. We are grateful, Shamayim Father. Why? Because don't you see all the things that I feed in Matthew 6? I feed I clothe the grass, I feed the other animals. And aren't you greater than many sparrows? You think you haven't looked up yet? You see, look at the birds. And get what it says. We are grateful, Heavenly Father, for the vigor of health. For what? For the vigor of health and health of body. Why would he say that? Forget not Yahuwah's benefits, who heal all your diseases. You get what it says? Wise, bright, and clear-eyed, with swiftness of foot, quick hearing of ears, strength of arms, and eyesight of the eagle. For all the manifold gifts of life, we do worship the fire of life, and the Qahalath of the Shamayim order. We do worship the fire and the good, the friendly, the fire of life, the most beneficial and the most helpful. Because all things are lawful, but all things are not helpful. Because we know that the bar, he said the bar of Yahuwah, Yahushua Mashiach. It says, for the fire of life, Yahushua said, I'll come to you, might have life and have it more abundantly. The most supporting and most bountiful, that fire which is the house of Yahuwah. It says, behold now the child of light, we thus commune with the Malachia of life. Right? So we look at all that. We look at Yahushua Mashiach. Look at the life that gives us, the man who gives us life. We look at his truth. We look at the truth that will make you free, not the truth that will cage you in. We look at the cage, he said, looking at being set free from all of the bondage of this life. We look to be made free, to be able to fly on the wings of the wind continually. That we may feed us with our akla, our akal, even as he fed Adam with his food in the garden. Right? So we look at ourselves, we look at the truth, and we look at our inward man. And we look not to be like the people in the wilderness, whom Yahuwah was not well pleased with. For we depend on him for all things, and we trust in him for all things, even for our own sanity, even for our own health, even for our own food. Knowing that he is the one who gives life and understanding, he directs our path, and he comes to us, and he tells us where to go and where to be. And then he tells us to go back. Then he tells us to move and to stop. He tells us to, everything that we do, whether we eat or drink or whatsoever you do, do in the name of Yahuwah, Elohim, and his son Yahushua. Why? Because all the things that you do have to be moving according to his, and making an alliance with him. So we look at ourselves and we look at our understanding. We look at Yahushua Mashiach. We looking at the meekest man on the earth, even Mashah. And then also we talked about he's going to beautify the meek with salvation. We know in Matthew chapter 5, he talks about how the meek will inherit the earth. Right? The meek will inherit the earth.